The day had started quietly on my ranch. The fields stretched out under the morning sun, the cattle grazed peacefully, and the sound of wind running through the trees made it feel like another calm day in the country. That calm didn't last long. By late afternoon, I would be staring down one of the most ridiculous stunts ever pulled by an HOA Karen, one that left 10 buses of confused strangers stranded outside my gates. It began with the usual nuisance. The HOA that bordered my land had always hated the fact that my ranch wasn't under their control. My property stood outside their jurisdiction, which made me a constant thorn in their side. Karen, the self-appointed queen of their board, never missed a chance to remind me that I didn't fit in with their carefully manicured community. She hated my livestock, despised the sight of my pickup trucks, and spread rumors that my land lowered property values. None of her words had power over me, but her persistence was relentless. For months, Karen had been escalating her antics. First, it was letters taped to my gate, warning me of imaginary violations. Then, she brought inspectors who had no authority to set foot on my land. When that didn't work, she switched to intimidation. One week, she parked her SUV at the end of my driveway, filming my family as we worked. Another week, she told neighbors I was running illegal businesses from my barn. I had dealt with all of it calmly, but when she hatched her most ambitious plan yet, I realized she had finally gone too far. The first sign of trouble came in the form of dust clouds rising on the distant road. At first, I thought it was a passing convoy of farm trucks. But as the shapes grew larger, it became clear that what was coming wasn't farm equipment. It was buses. 1, then 2, then 3, until I counted 10. They lumbered down the gravel road in a slow procession, engines roaring and brakes hissing. Each one was packed with people. I stood at my gate watching them approach, my confusion turning to disbelief. The buses rolled to a stop right outside my property. Doors swung open, and streams of strangers poured out, dressed in formal clothes as if they were arriving for a wedding or banquet. They carried bags, coolers, and gifts. Some were already looking around for a venue, others pulled out phones to start filming the countryside. None of them seemed to know me, yet all of them believed they had been invited to some grand event on my ranch. And there, standing proud at the front of the buses, was Karen. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose, she strutted around like she was organizing the world's largest block party. She pointed at my fields, waved her arms, and barked orders to the confused crowd. From the way she carried herself, you would think she owned not only the buses but the land itself. That's when it all clicked. Karen had told these guests, hundreds of them, that my ranch was the perfect venue for their gathering. She had somehow convinced them to rent buses, ride all the way out, and believe they were about to spend the day celebrating on my property. She hadn't asked me, hadn't warned me, hadn't even bothered to consider that I might refuse. She simply decided she would use my land without permission, as if my ranch was another HOA park she could dictate over. The situation was absurd, but also dangerous. People were piling up outside my gate, dozens at a time, crowding along the fence and calling out. They wanted to know why the gate was locked. They wanted to know when they could come in. They were expecting food, tables, and entertainment. All the while, Karen paced back and forth, pretending that she was handling a minor miscommunication. I didn't open the gate. Instead, I stood my ground. This was my land, my responsibility, and Karen had crossed the line. The crowd outside grew restless, murmuring among themselves as they realized something was wrong. They pulled Karen aside, demanding answers. Faces turned sour as confusion gave way to anger. One by one, they began confronting her. Karen tried to spin it. She waved her clipboard and insisted everything was fine, that she had cleared it with me. But when the guests looked past her and saw me standing silently behind the locked gate, her story fell apart. They began shouting at her, questioning her, demanding refunds. She tried to regain control, raising her voice, but the group had turned on her completely. Meanwhile, I leaned on the fence post, calm as ever. I didn't need to say a word. The longer I stayed silent, the more obvious it became that Karen had orchestrated the entire disaster without my knowledge. She had brought 10 buses full of strangers to my ranch, lied about permissions, and expected me to roll over. Now, the lie was unraveling in front of everyone. Minutes turned into an hour. The sun sank lower in the sky, and the buses idled with engines humming. Some guests demanded to be driven back immediately. Others refused to get back on until they had answers. The drivers were caught in the middle, forced to wait while tempers flared. The once cheerful crowd had become a mob of frustration. And through it all, Karen's composure cracked piece by piece. By the time the buses finally turned around, the air outside my gate was filled with shouting. Guests stormed back onto the buses, slamming doors, shaking their heads in disbelief. The drivers pulled away slowly, one by one, until the long procession disappeared down the road. Karen, red-faced and humiliated, tried to linger, perhaps hoping to salvage some authority. But she had none left. She climbed into her SUV, slammed the door, and sped off, leaving behind nothing but dust and her reputation in ruins. When the last sound of engines faded, silence returned to the ranch. The cattle had barely looked up from grazing. The field stretched out, untouched and peaceful again. My land had held firm, and Karen's most outrageous stunt had collapsed under the weight of her arrogance. Later, I heard that word of her scheme had spread quickly through the HOA. Guests she had tricked demanded refunds. Neighbors ridiculed her. Board members began questioning whether she should even remain in charge. For once, her endless energy for control had backfired spectacularly. I didn't need to retaliate. I didn't need to escalate. The locked gate had done the work for me. Karen's buses full of strangers had turned into her own undoing, and all I had to do was let the truth reveal itself. On my ranch, outside the reach of her rules, the land stood as proof that some boundaries can't be crossed, no matter how many buses you bring. Do like, subscribe for more.